Hello adventurers and mystery hunters. Have you ever wondered if those majestic fire-breathing winged creatures really existed? Get ready for an epic journey because today we are going to unravel one of the greatest enigmas in history. Dragons, myth or reality? I promise you that what you will discover will blow you away. From ancient legends to surprising scientific findings, we are going to explore every corner of this fascinating question. So, tighten your seatbelt and join me on this incredible adventure that will challenge everything you thought you knew. Let us begin. To start, what exactly is a dragon? In many cultures, dragons are huge, powerful creatures, usually with the ability to fly and, in some cases, to breathe fire. Their descriptions vary widely. Some have scales, others have feathers, some are benevolent, others are fearsome and destructive. However, a common characteristic is their imposing size and reptilian appearance. From Europe to Asia, and in many other cultures, dragons have become symbols of strength, mystery, and sometimes terror. Chinese dragons, for example, are seen as wise and protective beings, associated with rain and rivers. These dragons are usually depicted without wings, with long, serpentine bodies that wind through the sky. In contrast, European dragons are often presented as winged beasts that guard treasures and terrorize towns. These differences in the representation of dragons reflect the various ways in which these creatures were integrated into local traditions and mythologies. But why have dragons captured the human imagination so much? A possible explanation is that these creatures represent fear of the unknown. In ancient times, when knowledge about the natural world was limited, it was easy to fill in the gaps with fantastical creatures that explained unexplained phenomena. Dragons, with their power and mystery, were the perfect embodiment of those fears and wonders. Additionally, dragons can also symbolize the duality of human nature. On the one hand, their ferocity and destructiveness may reflect our own aggressive and destructive impulses. On the other hand, his wisdom and power can represent our highest aspirations. This duality makes dragons fascinating and complex characters in stories and myths, capable of representing both good and evil, creation and destruction. Dragons have left an indelible mark on popular culture. From classic literature to modern fantasy films, these creatures remain a central element in countless stories. Their ability to inspire awe ensures that dragons will continue to be an important part of our collective imagination. In the next sections, we'll explore how these mythical creatures could be based on more than just imagination. Could real dragons have existed at some point in history? Let's find out together. Dragons have been an integral part of mythology in almost every culture in the world, appearing in stories and legends that have been passed down from generation to generation. In Chinese mythology, the dragon is a symbol of power, strength, and good fortune. These serpentine, wingless creatures are deeply connected to water, controlling rivers, seas, and the weather. Chinese dragons are seen as benevolent and wise, very different from their Western counterparts. This positive view of the dragon is reflected in celebrations such as Chinese New Year, where parades featuring brightly colored dragons are a common sight. In Europe, however, dragons are generally portrayed as malevolent and destructive beings. They often appear in medieval tales as guardians of treasure or as beasts that must be defeated by brave knights. St. George's Dragon, for example, is a classic story where the hero kills the dragon to save a princess and her kingdom. These stories not only highlight the courage and nobility of the heroes, but also reflect human struggles against the forces of nature and the unknown. The dragon also plays an important role in Norse mythology. In these legends, creatures such as Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, and Fafnir, a dragon who guards a vast treasure, are central figures. Jormungandr is a snake so large that it can circle the world and bite its own tail, and it is said that its rising from the ocean will mark the beginning of Ragnarok, the end of the world. Fafnir, on the other hand, was a dwarf transformed into a dragon by his greed, highlighting the dangers of greed and corruption. In Mesoamerican cultures, we find Quetzalcoatl, a deity represented as a feathered serpent, which combines characteristics of birds and snakes, symbolizing the duality between heaven and earth. The Aztecs and Mayans revered Quetzalcoatl as a god of wind and learning, a being who brought knowledge and civilization to humanity. This depiction of a dragon or winged serpent with a positive connotation is further testimony to how perceptions of these creatures vary throughout the world. In Japanese mythology, dragons are known as ryu and are aquatic beings that inhabit rivers, lakes, and seas. As in Chinese culture, these dragons are considered protectors and symbols of power and wisdom. The Japanese dragon Ryujin, for example, is the god of the sea, able to control the tides and fish, and is said to live in an underwater palace made of corals and precious stones. The stories of Ryujin and other Japanese dragons show a deep connection to nature and respect for natural forces. In summary, dragons in mythology are multifaceted creatures whose attributes and symbolism vary greatly between cultures. From benevolent guardians to fearsome monsters, these figures have captured the human imagination and reflect our own struggles and aspirations. Some scientists and archaeologists have proposed that dinosaur fossils could have inspired dragon legends. He imagines being a medieval peasant and digging up the gigantic bones of a T-Rex. Without knowledge of dinosaurs, it would be easy to think you found the remains of a dragon. This find would not only have been impressive, but also terrifying, giving rise to stories of gigantic winged creatures that once ruled the earth. In various parts of the world, fossils have been found that could have contributed to stories of dragons. In China, for example, there is a long tradition of finding dragon bones that are actually dinosaur fossils. These relics were used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries, further fueling legends about these mythical creatures. Modern science has confirmed that many of these bones belong to dinosaurs, but the cultural fascination with dragons endures. In addition to fossils, there are also historical accounts of large reptiles such as crocodiles and snakes, which may have contributed to the legends. In ancient times, explorers and travelers brought with them stories of enormous creatures that inhabited distant lands. These tales, often exaggerated and transformed over time and distance, could have been the seed for the dragon stories we know today. The ancient Greeks and Romans also played an important role in perpetuating dragon myths. Pliny the Elder, a Roman naturalist, wrote about dragons in his work, Natural History. He described giant snakes in India and Ethiopia, based on the accounts of travelers and traders. Although these stories were largely fictional or exaggerated, they contributed to the widespread belief in dragons during the Middle Ages and Renaissance. It is important to consider how the lack of scientific understanding in past eras contributed to the creation of myths about dragons. Without knowledge of dinosaurs and paleontology, the ancients could not contextualize the finds of large bones and fossils. Instead, they turned to legends and myths to explain the inexplicable. Thus, historical and fossil finds not only offer us a possible explanation for the origin of dragon myths, but also show us how humanity has always sought to understand the world through the stories we tell. But not all the dragons are mythological. There are real animals that could have inspired these stories. For example, the Komodo dragon is a giant lizard that lives on some islands in Indonesia. With its impressive size, venomous bite and ferocious demeanor, it's easy to see how it could be mistaken for a dragon in ancient times. This reptile can measure up to 3 meters long and weigh more than 70 kilograms, making it the largest lizard in the world. His ability to hunt and devour prey much larger than him, along with his fearsome appearance, make him a perfect candidate to have inspired dragon legends. In addition to the Komodo dragon, there is a creature known as the basilisk, a species of lizard that can run on water. This almost magical ability has earned him the nickname, Jesus Christ Lizard, and may have given rise to stories of creatures with supernatural abilities. Imagine watching a basilisk run across the surface of a river. It would be easy to think that you are witnessing something extraordinary and worthy of legend. This natural phenomenon, although explained scientifically, could have been interpreted very differently in ancient times. Another example is the saltwater crocodile, which also lives in parts of Southeast Asia and Australia. These crocodiles can reach gigantic sizes, with some individuals measuring more than 6 meters in length. Their aggressive behavior and ability to live in both saltwater and freshwater could have contributed to myths about dragons dominating both land and water. Stories of large reptiles emerging from rivers and devouring anything in their path could have been fueled by actual encounters with these crocodiles. Nature also offers examples of creatures that, although not as large, possess characteristics that evoke the image of a dragon. Take, for example, the flying snakes of Southeast Asia. These snakes can flatten their bodies and glide through the air from tree to tree, a behavior that could be interpreted as flight. Although they do not breathe fire or are gigantic, These snakes' ability to move through the air may have inspired tales of flying dragons in the region. There is the phenomenon of fossils. Many believe that dinosaur fossils discovered in ancient times could have given rise to legends of dragons. Without knowledge of dinosaurs, it would be easy for ancient cultures to find the giant, jagged bones and assume they belonged to legendary creatures. The lack of scientific context in those times meant that any such discovery could be interpreted through the prism of mythology and superstition, giving rise to some of the most enduring dragon stories we know today. Even in modern times, there are occasional reports of sightings of creatures that could be dragons. These reports come from all over the world, from the remote mountains of China to the deserts of America. Despite living in an era where science and technology predominate, tales of dragons have not completely disappeared. The stories vary widely, but they all share common elements that make us question whether we really know all the creatures that inhabit our planet. A fascinating case comes from Guizhou province in China, where in 2001 several witnesses claimed to have seen a giant creature flying over the mountains. They described the being as a serpentine dragon with shiny scales, similar to traditional descriptions of Chinese dragons. Local residents were convinced that this was a real apparition, and some even managed to capture blurry images that fueled even more controversy and fascination. Another interesting incident occurred in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, where in 2013 sightings of a huge, winged creature flying over the dunes at dusk were reported. Witnesses described it as a gigantic reptile with an impressive wingspan, leading some experts to suggest it could be an unknown large bird or even a surviving pterosaur. Although these explanations did not convince everyone, the mystery remains unsolved. In South America, the legends of the Quetzalcoatl in Mexico and the Yamaruf in Peru have also had alleged modern sightings. In 2016, a group of hikers in the Amazon rainforest claimed to have seen a dragon-like creature with a long, scaly body and membranous wings. Although there is no concrete evidence, the stories coincide with traditional descriptions of these mythological beings, keeping alive the possibility that something extraordinary may be hidden in the depths of the jungle. In Scotland, home of the famous Loch Ness Monster, there are also sporadic reports of dragons. In 2018, a man walking in the Highlands claimed to have seen a winged creature emerge from a lake. According to his account, the creature had horns and scales, and resembled classic depictions of European dragons. Although many dismissed his story as fantasy, others wonder if there might be some truth behind these observations. These modern cases of sightings remind us that, despite scientific and technological advances, the world is still a place full of mysteries. Although many of these accounts can be attributed to misunderstanding or exaggeration, others are harder to completely dismiss. The persistence of these stories suggests that our fascination with dragons is as timeless as the myth itself, and maybe, just maybe, there are secrets still waiting to be discovered. The idea of dragons has been explored not only in mythology, but also in science fiction and speculative biology. The fundamental question is, could a creature like a dragon really exist? To answer this, we must consider several factors, from biology to physics. For example, dragonflight would require a specific set of anatomical adaptations, such as hollow bones and a light body structure, similar to that of birds and bats. These aspects lead us to wonder if biological limitations would allow the existence of such an impressive being. Paleontology provides us with some interesting clues. Fossils of prehistoric creatures such as Quetzalcoatlus, a giant pterosaur with a wingspan of more than 10 meters, demonstrate that nature has produced animals that defy our current understanding. Although these were not dragons in the mythological sense, their existence proves that gigantic, flying creatures are not impossible. Additionally, fossils of feathered dinosaurs discovered in China suggest that ancient reptiles could have had much more varied appearances than we imagine, perhaps inspiring stories of feathered dragons. Another fascinating aspect is the possibility of internal combustion. For a dragon to breathe fire, it would need a biological mechanism that allows the production and expulsion of flammable substances. Some scientists speculate that there could be specialized organs, similar to venom glands in some snakes, that mix chemicals that would ignite upon contact with air. This hypothesis, although speculative, adds a layer of plausibility to stories of fire-breathing dragons, although there is no concrete evidence to support it. Cryptobiology studies, the discipline that investigates cryptozoological beings with a scientific perspective, have also attempted to address the existence of dragons. Although most tales of dragons are considered myths, some cryptozoologists suggest that modern sightings of large reptiles may be survivors of ancient lineages unknown to science. This possibility, although remote, keeps hope alive that there are still amazing secrets to be discovered in our world. Genetics and evolutionary biology teach us that life on Earth is incredibly diverse and adaptive. Creatures we once considered impossible, such as giant squid and transparent frogs, have been discovered in recent times. This reminds us that our understanding of biodiversity is far from complete. Perhaps, in some remote and still unexplored region, there are beings that inspired the legends of dragons. Although mythological dragons may remain a fantasy, science continues to open doors to possibilities that once seemed unimaginable. Dragons have left an indelible mark on human culture, transcending geographical and temporal boundaries. From ancient China to medieval Europe, these creatures have been depicted in countless forms of art, literature, and folklore. In Asia, especially China, the dragon is a symbol of power, strength, and good fortune. Holidays, such as Chinese New Year, include parades with huge paper dragons that dance to the beat of drums, celebrating hope and prosperity. In Europe, dragons often symbolize chaos and evil, but also defiance and bravery. Medieval knights in tales and legends frequently face dragons as the ultimate test of their courage and skill. Stories like that of St. George and the dragon have inspired generations, showing how confronting these beasts can be a symbol of fighting against our own inner demons. The impact of dragons on literature is monumental. From classics like Beowulf and The Hobbit to the contemporary saga of A Game of Thrones, dragons continue to capture the imagination of readers of all ages. In The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, the dragon Smaug is one of the most iconic creatures, representing greed and terror, while in A Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen's dragons symbolize power and rebirth. In film and television, dragons have been brought to life with amazing special effects. Movies like How to Train Your Dragon have not only delighted children, but have also taught valuable lessons about friendship and understanding the unknown. The A Game of Thrones series used dragons to explore complex themes of power and responsibility, elevating the narrative to epic levels and keeping viewers on the edge of their seats. Additionally, dragons have influenced other aspects of popular culture, such as video games, where they appear as formidable enemies or powerful allies. Games like The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, and Dragon Age allow players to interact with dragons in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades ago. This vast and diverse cultural impact demonstrates that dragons are not just mythological creatures, but powerful symbols that resonate deeply in the human psyche. Throughout history, there have been numerous testimonies of people who claim to have seen dragons. These stories come from various cultures and eras, suggesting that belief in dragons is a global phenomenon. For example, in medieval Europe, knights and peasants frequently spoke of encounters with enormous, scaly creatures that guarded hidden treasures. In Asia, especially China and Japan, tales of dragons were common, describing these beings as benevolent and wise, capable of controlling the weather and bringing good fortune. In more recent times, there are reports of sightings of creatures that could be considered dragons. For example, in 1975, in the Gobi Desert, a group of explorers claimed to have seen a gigantic winged reptile that made an earth-shattering roar. Although no physical evidence was found, the explorers' testimonies were convincing and detailed, describing the animal with a precision that suggested a real experience and not a mere hallucination. In addition, there are stories from sailors and fishermen who claim to have seen sea dragons in the depths of the ocean. These stories often describe giant sea serpents with scaly bodies and heads similar to those of the dragons of legend. A notable case is that of Captain James Harris, who in 1840 documented an encounter with a colossal sea creature during his voyage across the Atlantic. His story was so shocking that he even inspired writers and artists of the time. In South America, dragon legends are equally fascinating. The indigenous tribes of the Amazon speak of giant creatures with snake bodies and bat wings that lived in the depths of the jungle. Although these stories are primarily passed down orally, ancient drawings and petroglyphs found in the region appear to depict these beings, suggesting that dragons were an integral part of the mythology and worldview of these cultures. We cannot ignore the testimonies of modern cryptozoologists, who dedicate their lives to the search for mythical creatures. Some of them have collected anecdotal evidence, such as gigantic footprints and remains of scaly skin, that could belong to dragons. Although this evidence is inconclusive and often faces skepticism from the scientific community, it keeps hope alive that, somewhere in the world, dragons may still exist. Modern science has attempted to demystify the existence of dragons in several ways, approaching the topic from different angles. One of the most common approaches is the idea that dragons are an amalgamation of different real animals. For example, it has been suggested that giant snakes, crocodiles and bats could have been combined in dragon stories. Additionally, ancient cultures' interpretation of dinosaur fossils may have influenced descriptions of these mythical creatures. Paleontologists have discovered that many dinosaur fossils, with their impressive sizes and shapes, could have been interpreted as dragons by ancient civilizations. A significant discovery in this area was that of protoceratops in the Gobi Desert, whose remains could have been the basis for stories of griffins, mythological creatures that share some characteristics with dragons. This theory suggests that dragons may have actually been misunderstandings of prehistoric remains. Additionally, some scientists have explored the possibility that dragons may be a figment of human imagination, enhanced by biological and psychological factors. Studies in neuroscience suggest that fear of large predators is deeply ingrained in the human psyche. This predisposition could have led to the creation of figures such as dragons in our collective mythology. The impact of hallucinogenic substances on visions and stories of dragons in certain cultures has also been considered. Genetics and modern biology have also offered interesting insights into the possibility of the existence of creatures like dragons. Advances in genetic engineering have allowed scientists to imagine how organisms with dragon-like characteristics could have evolved. For example, the abilities to fly and breathe fire, although extremely unlikely, are not completely impossible to explain in biological terms with advanced genetic manipulation technologies. The discovery of new species in remote places continues to challenge our notions about what is possible in the animal kingdom. From bioluminescent creatures in the depths of the ocean to giant reptiles in the jungles, each new discovery reminds us that nature is full of surprises. Although no concrete evidence of dragons has been found, the diversity and adaptability of life on Earth leaves us with an open door for imagination and hope for future extraordinary discoveries. The study of dragons is a constantly evolving field. With the advancement of new technologies and research methods, scientists and enthusiasts have more sophisticated tools to explore the possible roots of dragon legends. For example, 3D scanning and reconstruction technology has made it possible to recreate dinosaur fossils in unprecedented detail, providing clearer images of what the prehistoric reptiles that inspired stories of dragons might have looked like. In addition, genetics and molecular biology are opening new doors in the search for answers. Sequencing ancient DNA allows us to better understand the evolution of extinct species and how creatures resembling dragons could have existed. Research in the field of paleontology is continually unearthing new species of dinosaurs, some of which possess characteristics that could easily have been interpreted as a draconian by our ancestors. Another promising area is the exploration of remote and inaccessible regions of the planet. Unexplored jungles, ocean depths, and underground cave systems could harbor unknown species that challenge our current conceptions of terrestrial fauna. With the use of drones, underwater robots, and other advanced technologies, researchers are beginning to discover new species at an accelerated pace. Could it be possible that there are still dragons to be discovered in some hidden corner of the Earth? In addition to biology and paleontology, interdisciplinary research involving anthropology, history, and archaeology could also shed new light on the dragon myth. By analyzing ancient texts, works of art, and archaeological remains with modern techniques, researchers can reconstruct how ancient societies perceived and represented these creatures. This not only helps us understand the past, but may also offer clues to the possible existence of dragons in real history. Imagination and scientific speculation also play a crucial role. Documentaries, novels, and films about dragons continue to inspire young people and scientists alike, keeping interest in these mythical creatures alive. By continuing to explore the possibility of dragons through these means, you foster an environment of curiosity and searching that could, one day, lead to amazing discoveries. Although the existence of dragons as we know them in legends remains a mystery, the future of research promises to be as exciting and revealing as the dragon stories themselves. So, are dragons real or just myths? The answer, as we have seen, is not simple. While there is no conclusive evidence that dragons exist as we imagine them, there are enough hints and historical evidence to suggest that dragon stories may be based on something real. Whether they come from dinosaur fossils, sightings of large reptiles, or simply from the rich human imagination, dragons will continue to be a fascinating part of our culture and mythology. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of dragons. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel for more interesting content. What do you think? Do you think dragons could have existed? Leave me your opinion in the comments. Until next time. Remember to follow me on my social networks to be aware of all the news on the channel. And if you have any topics you'd like me to cover in an upcoming video, let me know. See you in the next video. Bye!